guys, happy Friday, and today I'm going to be doing my scary urban legend stories. Today, I do this every Friday as a series from now on. I didn't do it last week or the day before because just didn't have chance to do it, but now I can because I film all the time now. And today I'm going to be talking about Annabelle, the doll, and I'm going to be telling you the urban legend, and I'm also going to be telling you the real story of it. So, the urban legend of this story is, I've watched a film called Annabelle Creation, and it's a really good film. It's based upon the doll, the Annabelle doll, but it tells you the real story behind the doll, kind of. And in the film, there's a little girl called Annabelle, but they call her B for short. And there's the mum and dad. And the dad works as a doll maker, and he makes her this scary looking doll, which he names Annabelle after her. And he gives it to her as a gift, like as a birthday present. And they're all three of them are like presidents, so they go to church as well. So the priest and everything always sees them go in there and then come out. But obviously there's one day where the little girl gets run over by a car and she dies in an accident. And it's an accident because the driver apologises and didn't know she was in the road, and her doll falls with her, and her parents are really upset, so they grab the doll and they put it in this kind of cupboard, and her house, then they sell the house, and this house in the film becomes an orphanage for unfortunate kids, because the parents thought to do that in Annabelle's name. But they say that in the film, Annabelle's soul or ghostly presence is living in the doll, and it's kind of possessed the doll in ways, because in the film she's constantly taunting these other orphans, and she's tall as well. She acts all tall and scares them as well. But yeah, her presence is in the doll and it possesses the doll. So that's pretty much the kind of urban legend sort of story behind it, because it's kind of true in the real story, but not exactly that way. And then now the real story of the Annabelle doll is, the Annabelle doll in the film isn't this creepy looking one, it's actually a rag doll. And if I had my phone on me, I could show you a picture of her, the real doll, the real Annabelle doll. She was a rag doll. And the real story was she was given as a gift to, I think, a nurse or something like that. And they kept her. And there was when they kept her in the house, there was these weird occurrences that kept happening, like people being scratched. There was a guy in the actual real life story of it, and he was staying at the house, and the doll was in the room, was in the room, I think, and it was sitting there, and he was trying to sleep, and he woke up the next morning with scratches all over him, and like Annabelle sort of trying to choke him, I think. And the real doll was like possessed by a demon, but they didn't know that. They thought it was just a creepy ass doll, just keep moving about, and it was just some kind of like ghostly stuff. So obviously the nurse or whoever it was that received the doll called Ed and Lorraine Warren, who are paranormal activists, and that they said to them that they've got this doll and it keeps doing all this weird stuff, like scratching them and doing all this weird stuff and moving about and then coming back. And they said that they'd check it out. They also sent a priest along with them in case. And they checked it out, and they found out that this doll was actually possessed by a demon inside. So they ended up, the priest and Ed and Lorraine ended up like investigating it, and then after a while they came to the conclusion to take the doll to a museum in Illinois, Connecticut. And this is a museum where the Ed and Lorraine Warren cases, a lot of the cases they did in the films, but not a lot of them mentioned in the films, were actually, they've got this big museum with all of what they've discovered in their cases, and they kept the doll in this glass box, behind this glass box. And it says, and I think I remember, it says on the doll, or underneath the doll, beware, do not touch this, like do not touch this doll, because there was another thing in the story that I didn't mention, and obviously when they took it there, they said prayers over it, and they made sure that no one come into contact with it. But there was a priest who was working on the case, and he was always dealing with the doll, and he went home that night and got into a car accident because he was in the car driving, and then he saw the image of the doll in the wind mirror, and he just crashed and died, which is sad, I know. And it was because of the doll that he died. And then there was another incident after that when Ed and Lorraine Warren was there, and this guy came with his girlfriend to see the doll, like in the museum, as a visitor. And he came and he said, I'm not scared of this doll. This doll is a bunch of rubbish. I don't believe in it. It's not going to scare me. And he kept shaking the box and he kept touching it. And Ed was saying, stop doing that, if you don't like it, then get out. And he was telling him to get out, and because he was ruining it for everyone else who wanted the experience. And that was like the big mistake for him, because he said that to a doll that was possessed, and he said, I'm not afraid of you, and blah blah blah. And he went on his motorbike that night, and then he crashed because of that incident. And it's a really sad but horrific story, the real life story of it, because the doll's still around now and it's in a museum. And I remember recently watching on YouTube, because I watch a lot of the stuff that goes on with, Ed and Lorraine Warren. I mean, they're not all down normal because they've gone recently. But I remember they've still got the museum up, and then people can still visit this doll. I remember recently watching on YouTube that they had to move the doll to another case in the museum. So I'm not sure whether they've moved it to another museum or it's in the same one, but they moved it in a different box. I think it was in a different box when I watched it. And I remember they have to wear gloves on their hands, like rubber gloves, so that the doll doesn't scratch them or cause any like negative energy towards them, because it feeds off that negative energy and all that. And I remember they moved the doll to another case in the museum, and they also said prayers over it, like, the Our Father and like religious stuff, if you're religious. And they did that recently, and they keep going on about it, saying it's still possessed, and anyone that tries to make conflict with this demon inside will get consequences, because there's actually a note on the door, but I think there's a note underneath the door, and it says like beware, I think, on the door, but then there's a note saying do not touch this door, because if you do, then obviously consequences happen and you end up dying or something happens. It's kind of a bit like a curse. So they're kind of the two stories behind Annabelle the doll. I have spoke about this on my channel before, and I went into the history more in detail. I'm not sure where that video is, but if you look for it, I'm sure you'll find it. But I did speak about this before, but it's nice to know that my new fans know about this story as well as my old. So I hope you enjoyed me talking about Annabelle the doll and having a little ramble with you guys. Hopefully I will do more of these scary urban legends next Friday, if I can think of another one, because I have loads more coming. So I hope you enjoyed the video, guys, and have a nice Friday today. I'm sure I will, and I will see you all, guys, in the next video. Bye, guys.